David Jordan Jr., editor-in-chief of Eastshade Magazine, and today I have the honor and privilege to be with Mr. Reginald Howard, former Negro League player and also author of Baseball's Silent Genocide, How They Cut Black Youth Out of Baseball. Mr. Howard, how are you doing today?
Just fine, sir. Just fine.
Now, to get started, what was your introduction to this game of baseball?
I actually started back as far as, well, with my uncle, Hubert Mitchell, who had a semi-pro team around South Bend. And sometimes on Sundays, he would provide my mother with a little relief by my brother Carlton, who's a couple of years older than I, and we would go out to the games with him. And next thing I knew, I was picking up bats at games and doing the little things that bat boys do. And it's a very young age. I mean, like 8, 9 years old, I was picking up the bats with them. And I just was completely enamored at baseball players. It's just something about it I just loved. The environment, the language, and seeing so many guys that this was somebody to admire from my perspective at that time.
Now, with that introduction to the game and you starting to play, I would imagine, did you start playing with older men or were you playing with kids your age, or was it a mixture of both?
Actually, with kids of my age, around 11 and 12, we had baseball in 10, 11-year leagues, 12, 13, 14, 15, like that. And then at 16, we sort of gravitated away from the playground, like to the sort of semi-pro black teams. And there was two in South Bend at that time. And it was either one or the other of those two teams you'd be a part of.
So your introduction to professional baseball was a relatively early age. You were still a teenager.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time, again, when I wasn't playing, black teams would come in the Negro League, and some of the barnstorming teams would come in to play the Studebaker team at South Bend, or either the Hoosier Beer team, it was a beer conference team, and they generally wouldn't have traveling bat boys with them, so I would just pick up the bats for them during the course of the game, and it gave me an opportunity to meet and greet and just just a great time as far as I was concerned to meet some of the top players of black baseball in that area. People like Candy Jim Taylor, people like Buster Hayward, people like Piper Davis, all different managers of different teams. And also meet traveling secretaries like Bunny Downs with the Clowns, and Woody Woody Jones with the Monarchs. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, with the Monarchs. And so that's just as best as I can do. And just dialogue and hear people talk about baseball. It was so important to me to hear them talk about, we'll be in Baltimore Sunday, we'll be in New York next Sunday, and that kind of thing. It was just, and basketball was the only thing that blacks had for sports. There was no National Football League early on when I was a kid. There was no National Basketball Association. So that was it, professional baseball. It sort of bothers me to hear kids say today that we don't like baseball. It's the reason why we don't like baseball. And so that's one of the reasons why I had to put this book together, to show the part that we were involved in baseball and that we didn't have anything but baseball. So again, we had the Negro American, Negro National League, and we had the barnstorming teams that went in and out of certain areas to provide entertainment for a baseball standpoint of view.
And with that aspect of it, the entertainment side, the full spectacle of a Negro League baseball game. Like most people talk about, the actual game, but what was the entire experience for you first as a young person, as a fan, as a bat boy, and then playing, like the total experience from traveling to the games to arriving in the town to playing the game and then after the game and the interactions with the fans?
Yeah, it's a funny thing. This uncle I was talking about, Mitch, who had the center pro team. He also had a what they call I guess you call it a juke joint now, where people played pool and they gambled and so forth. And for some reason, where his place was located, it was sort of like or 2 blocks from the hotel where the ball players stayed. And they would gravitate down to his hotel and gamble and do whatever they would do and play pool and so forth. And I would have a first hand at dialogue and talking. I mean, it was just, and because of the fact that I was Mitch's nephew, I was pretty much accepted, by the players, and it gave me a chance to ask a lot of questions. There's one player I can think about all the time used to say, "Kid, you talk too much. You ask too many questions." But how do you learn if you don't ask?
So in those conversations that you had with the players, how impactful was that in your development as a player in the beginning of your career and continuing your career through playing in the Negro Leagues?
Well, fundamentals is what I was really interested in, and it was because I wanted to learn it from the bottom up. And I'd hear different people tell you how you feel balls in certain situations. Hear how the pitchers are involved in what they call PFPs, pitchers fielding practices. How when the ball is hit to the third base, the number 3 hole on the right side of the infield, and the first baseman and the second baseman are going after it, and the pitcher has to go over and cover first base. I'd hear him tell him that you go to the line, you go straight up the line, hit the bag with your right foot and pivot back toward the inside of the diamond. And for no other reason, you should never cross the bag, because that's when you have some really monumental accidents. It's just little things like that. Where cutoff men should be, and who you hits where, and that was the important thing. And that's the area I'd like to see our kids get back into today, because they get started too late. I like to see them get started at least 8, 9, 10 years old. Let them hit off a tee and find out what it is to hit off a tee. Let them learn how to use the inside-out swing to move the ball to the right side of the diamond, to stay away from the double play when you're on offense. This kind of things. And I don't think we're getting enough of that type of fundamentals to the kids now.
So in regards to as you spoke about the importance of fundamentals and the early development, in your book you've spoken about the importance of that, and what do you see as being a resolution for getting the youth back into the game in today's age?
If we get started on our youngsters early enough and teach them, you don't muscle it, you finesse it. And they work off of these tees and learn how do you make contact with the ball properly, make contact with the ball. And you learn what we call cookie areas in certain areas where the ball is thrown at. If it's on the outer half of that area, you're not going to get too much on it anyway. You wait for what ball players call mistakes or cookies to hit. And those are balls that are on the center part of the plate. And the patience that you have to have. You might want to swing at a pitch that's uptight on your chest and you can't get nothing on it. You make it out. Well, that's getting yourself out. But if you're smart enough to let it go by, the next one you get is cup high, and it's in the middle of the plate, and you hit it hard because it's a cookie. We have to teach, there's certain things that we're not getting that we need to be getting to our children.
And so, in regards to the development, in recent years, we saw the inclusion of Negro League stats with Major League Baseball stats after all this time. Now, when you were playing within the team and within the league, were there discussions amongst you all knowing that you were better than a lot of the players that were playing in the major leagues?
At the time I came along, no. This the amount of players that were coming in the mid and late 50s had degraded because they began taking players from the black leagues in the 40s. And so they were good players, but they weren't quite as on the major league level. But from the time I was a bad boy, say from 45 up to 50, it was comparable to Major League Ball. Negro League was just about as good. You could go to any ball club and get a major league player. What tickles me, they always talk about somebody like Jackie Robinson went up to the major leagues. Well, how can he be going up to major leagues when he's playing in the league where Willie Wells is playing short, or where Sammy T. Hughes is playing second, or where you have third basemen like Judy Johnson? I mean, you're not. They can't be going up from that league. What are they talking about? So, but in order to do some of the things that the others outside the areas wanted to do, who were controlling things, they had to devalue the amount of play that we were playing. But it wasn't so. It was Kennesaw Mountain Landis, who was the commissioner of Major League Baseball, who did not want the major league teams to play the black teams, and put out a directive to that effect. You can't play the black teams. It wasn't from the black side. It came out from the so-called white side. So it's just it's disturbing to me to hear that type of verbiage being sent out all on the waves. It shouldn't be hearing that kind of garbage.
What do you think is the biggest misconception that somebody that wasn't alive during that time when the Negro Leagues were playing and what they would hear today? What would you say to people that aren't very educated and informed about the Negro League?
I don't know. It'd be hard to say. We had the speed, strength, quickness, and agility, which are really the four attributes that are required to excel in football, basketball, baseball. And I guess you could add boxing to that if you like. Well, that speed and quickness and stuff, it came out of the black leagues. We played differently. Played the game slightly differently than the way they played. We played more, we played ball to the extent that we manufactured runs more than they do. We stole more bases, that kind of thing. Hit and run a little bit more than they do. But again, the fact that we brought to the game a speed, a quickness, the Maury Wills, the Lou Brocks, stealing games, bases like that, right? You just didn't have in the amount of people that you had when you had in the black leagues. We had Cool Papa Bell, we had Speed Merchant, we had Willie Wells, we had Sammy T. Hughes, straight good base runners, great base runners, as well as great all-around players.
Now, with your book, Baseball Silent Genocide, How They Cut Black Youth Out of Baseball, what was the inspiration for you writing this book?
Again, so much misinformation is going out and is not going out, and a lot of great players that people never even heard of. That really bothers me. You like a Buck Leonard's, the Homestead Grays, Howard Eastland with the Grays, Wilmer Fields, just with all with the Grays. I'm not just sticking with the Grays, but there's just so many different players, but in both leagues. Sam Jethro with the Cleveland Buckeyes. Willard Brown with the Kansas City Monarchs. Home Run Brown. People don't even know who Willard Brown was. There's so many different players. It's just people have no idea that had so much to contribute that people never hear about it. It hurts to know that, and people think that Jackie Robinson was a tremendous person, as far as I'm concerned, and a tremendous ball player. But there were others who were equally as well, if not better. In fact, I remember one player around home, Leonard Johnson, who pitched. He played with the Monarchs, I think, in the '44 season, and he was always concerned. And I think I mentioned in the book where people were talking about Branch Rickey looking for a second baseman, and they not take Bonnie Sorrell, who was the second baseman over there in 1944. He always used to tell me that Sorrell could beat Robinson hitting, running, throwing, and thinking. So that was his observation. Those aren't my observations. But Robinson was a fabulous player, a good player.
Because I know in speaking earlier, you spoke about the different stadiums and ownership, the money that was involved in the league, the owners, how much money they had, and how they funded everything themselves. Could you speak about some of the different owners and everything?
Well, the Martin brothers here in Memphis that owned the Memphis Red Sox, it was W.S. and A.T. and J.B. and B.B. Martin, four Martin brothers. With the exception of J.B. had a problem with the political people here in Memphis. He was the head of the Republican administration, and at that time, politics were different than they are today. Most of the blacks were the people of the Republican Party and not the Democratic Party. And J.B. Martin, when they had the election here, he maneuvered things to the effect that the blacks were in it very heavily for Wendell Willkie, and the Democrats were going for Franklin Roosevelt. And it was very, very interesting when we come back to the election. They had the election that day, and the Democrats barely won. And that was at the time with Wendell Willkie. Excuse me, not Wendell Willkie, but J.B. Martin was literally ran out of Memphis, and he went to Chicago. And then went to Chicago. He bought the Chicago American Giants, and somehow manipulated himself to the point where he became the president of the Negro American League and reigned there until the league completely abolished itself. But Gus Greenlee was another good guy who owned the Pittsburgh Crawfords, who in 1931, I believe it was, he built a brand new ballpark in Pittsburgh, and you just don't hear that kind of thing. It was also the very first black person who sponsored a major boxing match between John Henry Lewis and John Gaynor, held outside at Martin's at his ballpark, Gus Greenlee Field in Pittsburgh. And we don't hear anything about Composey, who owned the Homestead Grays. And the Grays won 9 consecutive Negro National League pennants. You just don't hear talking about some of those great players from that era. and I think it's just too much has been left out from we hear from. We hear a lot of foolishness that I don't want to even get involved in discussion, but that's the way she bounces.
That's really incredible, and the fact that one, you've written the book, and then also that you continue to share your experiences and your knowledge about the players and the teams and the owners that a lot of people don't know about is important in continuing to educate the world on the history of the Negro League so that the next generation and the next generation can know the greatness of the league other than just the certain players that are talked about that came from there.
You know, they don't even know the teams. It's really disheartening. You just come to some of the people and say, "Who did Rube Foster put in the Negro League?" I don't know. He put in the Detroit Wolverines, the Dayton Marcos, the Stars, the Cuban Stars, and the St. Louis Stars, the Chicago Giants and the Chicago American Giants, and the Indianapolis ABCs, and there's one other team he had in there. Oh, the Chicago Giants and the Chicago American Giants. There was 8 different teams that he put in the original Negro National League, and our kids don't know anything about it. They don't even know it existed. So the ballparks we had, Martin Stadium in Memphis. We had a park in Nashville called Wilson Field. Tom Wilson, who later moved to Baltimore, they became the Baltimore Eli Giants. But they still came back to Nashville and played a certain amount of their home games in Nashville. And we had owners like T.H. Hayes Funeral Home, who owned the Birmingham Black Barons in Memphis, along with teams that people just don't have any idea. And we just need to bone up. We need to bone up and teach our kids so much that they haven't been taught about.
No, I definitely agree. It's important to continue educating and providing information that educates. I mean, people have to read, because if you rely on somebody else that doesn't know your history to give it to you, it's not going to be accurate, and it's going to be inconsistent.
A lot of inaccurate information is out there, and I don't like the inaccurate information. Our kids have a hard time as it all. Let's keep it straight and keep it clean. And as Rube Foster used to say, they tell me I didn't know him. Rube said, "Don't have to say nothing to embellish our program. Just tell them like it was." And it'd be well presented.
So how is it, because, they still have the reunions of Negro League players that are still getting together, and also we have the Negro League Museum. How is it in 2025 when you have the opportunity to connect with your fellow Negro League alumni?
Well, it's hard to figure. There's, everybody's gone almost. Most of the people have died out, and they're doing a lot of things to keep things going, which is certainly good. But I'd like to see some more things done from Major League Baseball for Negro League kids, these youngsters. I don't dislike it, but it just seems like it would be better to do something for the black kids in the areas where they can't get to baseball, to teach them about how the game should be played and give them people to give them the right style and types of a baseball that should be presented in the term, and not just talking about what some player who's deceased now, and a lot of them have been deceased now. We don't want to forget them, but let's not get concentrated on the deceased when we need to just concentrate on the kids that are coming up now a little bit more than what we're doing. What can we do now? You say, well, you don't know what to do. Well, you know what you do when you cut us out. undercut what you did to bring Cuttersuck in. Have you noticed every city you go into, where there's a high school and a baseball park was? There's no baseball park there now. There's a blacktop in basketball arenas. Well, what about baseball? And it's not because we didn't like to play baseball, but you moved in the outer cities, outer areas of the city, and you controlled the transportation out to those areas. So if we couldn't get out there to play, how can we go play? and then you come back and say, well, you don't like baseball. You don't like it because you cut out of it. You didn't control that.
No, that is definitely a perspective that's reality, because you don't see a lot of baseball diamonds in the inner city and just in cities in general. They're always outside on the outskirts of the city, and everybody doesn't have access to, number one, just get out there. It's not even about playing, but if it's 15, you can't walk. Kids used to walk to be able to go to the park and play baseball till the sun went down, and now you have to have transportation just to go play.
But they moved it so far out. It was so difficult for them to get to where it was. And they weren't treated the best way when they got in those kind of areas. So they just said, well, what's the use? Why keep going? So let's put a special effort on baseball. As I said in the book, that baseball within itself wouldn't be a panacea toward race relations or a cutback on black incarceration, but boy, it surely helped. There are a lot of guys who are probably locked up now who shouldn't be locked up if they just had an opportunity to play baseball, and we didn't give it to them.
So for you going forward, you have your book. What other things are you doing to keep the legacy of the Negro Leagues alive?
Trying to get this book out. I'm trying to get it out. And I think it's an excellent. Some people did not like it, but at my age now, I don't care if you don't like it. Baseball is silent genocide. How they cut black youth out of baseball. And it's very simple. Just read through it, and you'll find it. I just can't understand why we aren't getting more people involved and looking at it from this perspective. Nothing is improper. Nothing is no lies. There's Jorge Pascual in the Mexican League was paying out higher salaries than the major leagues was in. That's in there. It was in there that the World Series games, anybody who played or ducked the World Series to barnstorm would get fined or by Major League Baseball. In other words, the World Series, they could barnstorm the white teams against the black teams and go north and south of St. Louis, but they would have to do it after the World Series was played, because players would want to duck the World Series to go and barnstorm because they made more money barnstorming. And for 30 days, which they were allowed to barnstorm 30 days, but after the World Series would be 6 or sometimes 7 games, sometimes as low as 4. I knew about Josh Gibson. And I also knew about Turkey Stern. The black kids don't know about Turkey Stern. He was right behind Josh Gibson as a home run hitter, like the Cub catcher. What was his name? Right behind Babe Ruth. Name escapes me right now, but he hit a lot of home runs too. One interesting subject I'd like to tell you about. Uncle Mitch was telling me about a home run that he saw Josh Gibson hit off a page. And I was giving that information to, there used to be a Cub catcher named Rich Stelmazik. I was talking to his father one day. We sat down in Wrigley Field in the dugout. And and he was pretty much in agreement to what everything I was saying that Mitch told me about what he saw Josh do. And I asked him, did he ever see Josh Gibson play? He said, I played against him in Puerto Rico in the Winter League. I asked him what he thought he was. He said he was the strongest he'd ever seen in his life. And I told him, I said, I've heard a lot of people say that, but he was the first person not black I heard say that. And he said, well, anybody ever seen him play would tell you, nobody hit him like Josh. So that's the way I heard it all my life as a kid growing up.
Now, with any other stories in regards to Satchel Paige? Because, you know, he got the opportunity to play in the major leagues after, he had been playing.
Paige that I like, the one thing I like about all is that there's two little things I want to say about Paige. One, he was a human being. They tell a story about in Puerto Rico in the Winter League, he had the bases loaded, and Buzz Clarkson, Jim's Buzz Clarkson was coming up, and the pitcher went out to the mound, catcher went out to the mound, said, how you want to go after him? He said, we're going to put him on. He said, what? He said, we're going to put him on. He said, if you walk him in, you're going to walk in one run, you're leading 3-0. Now you're going to lead him 3-2, and the leading run is on second base, and the winning run is on first base. Satchel looked at him and said, I would give one, they give up 4. In other words, he had a hard time in getting Buzz Clarkson out. And those are the kind of stories that grabbed me the most, to say, hey, this guy's a human being too. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of stories you hear, but I like the ones that reflect him as a human being.
Now, with your career, how would you summarize your career? How would you summarize your career, your playing career?
An average player. As I tell the kids all the time, I had warning track power and couldn't run. So, no, they said I had good speed, but I didn't have great power, and just an average player. I'm sorry to say, but I'd like to say something different, but I can't say anything different. Just tell you what I actually experienced. And I loved every minute of it. I loved playing. I loved traveling. I loved meeting people and just dialoguing with people. It's a form of education that you just can't get any other way.